Hello, everyone. This is East Coast Economic Update for December the 20th, 2012. A lot of stuff going on today, but let's go on with the stuff that is not being talked about, and I'm going to finish up with what is obvious in everybody's forefront of their minds. First of all, I understand that the unemployment rate is dropping. Not. This article found here at humanevents.org. Title of the article, Food Stamps Grow 3 times the Rate of Job Creation. As of December the 11th, and that's only about a week ago, as of December the 11th, 607,000, that's 607 followed by 3 big zeros, joined the food stamp rolls this month alone. Even if you factor in the Hurricane Sandy issue, which is a valid option, we're still looking at least 300,000 to 400,000 people who are now presently on food stamps. And remember, you can't get food stamps unless you show that you can't get a job, or you're working under 20 hours a week. Either way, you're living below the poverty line. This number is not going down. It's not abating. It's not even tapering off for the holidays. It keeps growing exponentially and is touching, in some cases, I think that they're even lowballing this number because they're holding back a lot of the data, just like they're doing with unemployment, to show that it's not getting as big as possible. You're going to probably see it hit about a million, maybe 1.1 million by, I'd say, about February, March, after the holidays are over. The unemployment rate, as you know, is fictitious, but food stamps are food stamps. If people are taking them and money's coming out of the Treasury, you can't hide that. You can hide unemployment when you're taking people off the rolls because they've run out of benefits, or they just can't get a job, or they're working under 20 hours. Now, I've gone through in other videos in discussion of this, how they're now starting to count people who work part-time. They haven't indicated, of course, what constitutes full-time employment. In some guesstimations, because the GAO and the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, have been very, very tight-lipped about it because they've said it might affect the markets. But my guesstimation is they're probably holding close to 20 hours a week. Now, also one other thing is an interesting thing that I picked up online, and I'll have to go find it and put it up on here. But if now the Bureau of Labor Statistics, if they see you working 2 part-time jobs, 20 hours here and 15, 20 hours there, they count you twice. 2 people are employed for 1 person. So the funny stuff is going to continue on. Other news, fiscal cliff. Well, whether they come to an agreement or not, the truth is they're going to use this venue to blame each other. And people are already at the point of exasperation in regard to their Congress and their president. They have no control. They feel they have no control. They don't care. And the United States government knows this. The United States government also knows that they're going to do all kinds of funky things, including probably going over that fiscal cliff. Suffice it to say, the new Chinese government that just was installed last 3 weeks ago is already planning to shut down their payments or buying of our bonds. You can count on your one hand in the number of months that it's going to be before we're in complete spiral. And when I say complete spiral, I'm not talking about blood in the streets and all that stuff. What I'm talking about is more of a Russian style or Argentinian style collapse, where little things are going to happen. Like, for example, they're dropping the penny and the nickel, and they're talking about dropping the dollar and the $5 bill. So everything's going to be rounded up to 10 to the factor of 10, both in change and in bills. It's a form, and if you've been a close student watching Russian history after the collapse of the Soviet Union, as I have, that's how you create inflation. You force people to round prices up. Also, about 3 years ago, they started in these 1 pound or 2 pound containers. They've started showing they're showing the amounts of the in the container, even though it's a 1 pound container. They're showing it in kilograms or grams, and 500 grams equals approximately a pound. And these 1 pound containers are showing anywhere from 350 milligrams to grams to 400 grams. They've been doing this in Canada and the United States for at least the last 5 years, just to cut back the appearance of inflation. Once we start to do that, once the Chinese finally just say adios amigos, which they have already, but it's just we're ticking the clock away. You're going to start to see, if you haven't already, start to see an exponential growth, of course, as we're already seeing in the food stamp program, and also a price increase, and they're going to blame it on everything from the fiscal cliff to the fact that, well, we've eliminated the penny and the nickel and the single dollar bill and the $5 bill. Watch. Other news, the DMS-5 is coming out. If you're not savvy about the DMS-5, the DMS-4 and the DMS-3 are the quote-unquote Bible of psychologists. Originally, the DMS-2 and DMS-3 had in it showing homosexuality as a disease and a mental disorder. That was removed in the DMS-3 from the DMS-2. And in the DMS-4, they expanded such wonders such as autism, ADHD, the autism spectrum, Asperger's, and so forth. That was back in 1995. This one is very interesting. They basically count anybody with an emotional response. I feel happy, I feel sad, I lost a family member, I feel sad, as a mental disease, as depression. And if you don't have these emotions, like say, for example, you go to your local doctor or counselor and they say, and you don't want to express your feelings, say because you now know that if you do, it's considered a mental disease and they may require to give you a medication to control your depression or your hyperactivity. If you're happy about life, you must be hyperactive or manic. If you're not happy because you've lost a loved one or you're going through a trial in your life, well, obviously you're severely depressed and we need to put you on those medications. If you hide that information, you're considered a sociopath. And that opens up a whole new avenue of psychotropics that they can force on you. Food for thought. All this stuff is going on while we're looking at, unfortunately, mass shootings and craziness going on in Syria. Which brings me now to the discussion of the unfortunate happenings in Connecticut. Many people have asked me arguments, and I will post for you what's going on here in New York City. I'm back in the city, and I'll be going back up again very shortly. What's happening in the city, I put a couple of public radio articles, one of them talking about vaccinations and the enforcement of the Food Safety Act that was put out in 2010. Remember that one, S-1959? They haven't enforced it yet, and they were being asked why. There's also a reason why there's a mass exodus of the Amish Mennonites from Pennsylvania and Ohio into, of all places, upstate New York, where I'm located. I noticed that there was a big influx, side note, but now I know why, because they're trying to enforce it first on them. And they're not getting any real support from the local area because they have a bad reputation of taking jobs, the Amish, that is, amongst the Pennsylvania and Ohio areas. They've moved up to New York, and this is totally anecdotal, but they've seemed to have gotten a very tight response from the New York, upstate New York, central New York area, because they're very anti-gun control, and we're all conspiracy theorists up there. We wear, tin yarmulkes on our heads and hats, but they're getting a very good response. And of course, I'm saying this anecdotally. I've seen this, and I've heard some of what's going on. Which now brings me back to my original point. People have said to me, what do you think of what's going on as a clergyman, as as somebody who looks at the economy? And my argument is always this. History teaches that adding more laws to a situation does not make it better. Why? Because usually we place those laws in defense of the law-abiding citizen, in defense to the person who's going to break the law. Placing a law to somebody who is going to commit a crime is, I don't know, putting a dog chain on a person instead of on the rabid pit bull that is coming at you. It doesn't work. Justice works. There is enough human laws in the universe. I, for one, observe 613 of those laws in one way or another. And they are sufficient because primarily they're covered by those 10 major commandments that most monotheistic peoples, such as Christians, Muslims, and Jews, recognize universally as God's 10 commandments. Beyond those 10 commandments, the one thing that and I speak only for the Torah, for the 5 books of Moses, Moses states in Deuteronomy, justice you shall pursue. And that is the only thing that you can do, is to pursue justice. No matter how many laws, no matter how many restrictions, you could restrict people from using sharp knives, and someone will find a way to either to procure such a weapon, or will use a different weapon, either their hands or whatever. Eventually, you're going to create so many laws, but the truth is that when somebody does something wrong, and people will do things that are wrong, they must be punished to the full extent of that law, whatever that law is, whether you go towards capital offense and put someone to death, or if you give them life imprisonment. The truth is that you cannot make laws to protect children and people. Those laws already exist. They've existed for at least 5,000 years, and those laws have stood the test of time because people, basic citizens, understand that when someone else is being harmed, that you will do as Hillel and Jesus and probably Muhammad, stated, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In other words, if you see somebody being harmed, and you react to that as if I was being harmed, I'd want somebody to stop me. That's a reasonable, just, and moral response. There will always be mass killings, unfortunately. We could go through this whole discussion about MK Ultra and all the other conspiracies that exist. And notice I used the word conspiracies without a theory. There are conspiracies that do exist, and they're used by governments and organizations to control a situation, whatever that control may be. But truth is that the only way you will stop evil from happening is if you respond, you're a first responder to the evil and stop it. And then let justice, the court systems, and everything else that we've already created deal with it. All the laws in the world only aid, these complex laws only aid the criminal, not the law-abiding citizen. This is self-evident. We could ban guns forever. We could ban every gun on this country, on this planet. Murders would still go on. Unfortunately, people half-cocked for whatever reason will kill as many people, children, women, and innocent blood will spill as long as man decides that they will go above the law. So to create a law or create a host of laws beyond the 10 instructions that we all agree to in a Western society is the law of the land. And that we have a moral responsibility, each individual one of us, to protect one another because we're human beings with a soul, and that soul says, I don't want that to happen to me, and this should not happen to those people. And the response should be in kind. That is the mantra that we should all be speaking about. Not that guns kill people.